Hi guys, and welcome to this week's video. I'm going to photograph my favorite subject, and that subject is nothing. And to make things even more complicated, I fully intend to photograph nothing using very long exposures without the use of filters. Now, if you're intrigued by what obviously sounds like a stupid comment, then stick around. I promise you, it'll make an awful lot of sense. And not only will it make a lot of sense, but if you follow some of the advice that I'm about to offer, it'll definitely make you a better photographer. So I come out at sunset with the intentions of not photographing sunset, and I get that. You just can't believe that, can you? Okay, so the video hasn't started yet. I just can't let that go. Right, let's get back to the matter in hand. I'm dangerously close to some rather big waves. What's the chances this is going to end in tears? I'll get back on point in a second, just bear with me, I'm going to get back on point in a second. And in case you're wondering why I am using filters when clearly I said I wasn't, there's an end goal to this. Just bear with me, there's an end goal to it. So what on earth am I talking about? Photographing nothing, especially using long exposures without filters. Well, I'm going to build up to the end image. It's the end image I would like you guys to judge me on. But let me throw you in camera and give you a little bit of an idea of what I'm talking about. Please bear in mind, once again, I want you guys to judge me on the final image, not this one, but this will give you an idea. What I fully intend to do is to choose a subject, i.e. the post out here and a couple of the groin tops here, as my main element. By the time I flattened everything out in that frame and blended the horizon, the point I'm making is 90, maybe 95% of the image will contain nothing but negative space. In other words, nothing. For the viewer to look around the image, there's nothing really to look at. If I capture this at a 2-minute exposure now, blend the horizon in, it'll just give you an idea of what on earth I'm talking about. That there is going to be, let's have a look and see where I can go with it. Something like that there is going to be my composition. That's perfect, just there. Just there. That fits perfectly on the rules of thirds and everything. There's a tiny bit of mess in the corner here. I'll tidy that up in post-production, and once again I will blend that horizon. So let me just grab a 2-minute exposure of this image, and then you guys, fingers crossed, will have a rough idea of what I'm hoping to achieve for my very final image. Again, which is the one I would like you guys to judge me on. Just as that's exposing, just going to explain, clearly it's sunset, slightly after sunset now. My final image will be captured during the blue hour, maybe even slightly after the blue hour. Hence the reason I'll be able to capture long exposures without the use of filters. But there's a particular shot that I want to grab that unfortunately I can't grab just yet because the tide height is just covering these groins here a bit too much. But that works out perfect because as the tide starts to go out, and the tide is now very slowly starting to go out, the light will start to drop. So I can have that magic combination of lack of light, long exposure, and the correct tide height. And then, fingers crossed, I'm going to impress you with a picture. Fingers crossed. Now if you take a look at that picture now, by the time I've blended the sky into the sea, you're going to end up with So much negative space in there and only a tiny bit of detail for the viewer to look at. Now that, in my opinion, is pretty awesome, and I'm going to explain the reasons why. Negative space is a powerful element to use in photography. It helps emphasize the subject. It creates balance in the frame. It evokes calmness, isolation, and minimalism. It naturally draws the viewer attention to the subject, and it can even enhance storytelling within the image. This is an interesting composition. Again, it's not my final one, just to give you guys an idea of what I'm talking about. I'm going to shoot directly down onto the groins and pretty much fill the frame full of these incredible groins using a long exposure, and it's really cool to do that. But then I'm going to change my composition ever so slightly. Right, so I've got that shot in the bag, and to be fair, it does look really good. Really, really good. So now in the second shot, I've simply raised the camera to place the horizon on the third. Bear in mind, I am going to be blending the sky into the sea, so that horizon won't be there. But in doing that simply means I'm featuring the groins way less, and I'm featuring the negative space way more. And there's a famous saying in photography that very often, less is more. The groins play a strong role in this image, but in the second, it's the negative space that not only enhances the composition, but actually draws even more attention to the subject at hand. It's a lot darker here, by the way, than that camera would suggest. I've come quite a way away from the shoreline. Obviously it's a lot quieter now, so it'll be easier for you guys to hear me. Now, whilst this isn't, again, the final image that I want to, fingers crossed, impress you guys with, but this will be another shot that I think will work so well. So I'm looking at something like that. And once again, you've got to imagine there's no horizon, sky, sea, all blended into one. And in which case, I'm giving you nothing to focus on except the groins that will appear very minuscule in the image. 95%, I imagine, of nothing in this particular frame. That's so cool. And pictures like this become non-plus as well, so they actually become quite sellable assets. And of course, the one good thing about Blue Hour, i.e. shooting right now, is the lack of light. And because there is a lack of light, it means that I can extend my shutter speed and capture really long exposures without the use of filters. So I'm just going to explain to you how I'm going to calculate this. At the moment, I'm set at ISO 100 f8. I'm going to slow my shutter speed down, and at 30 seconds, my histogram is pretty much in the middle. Now, what you will notice is that the histogram won't work beyond 30 seconds. So you quite literally have to calculate it. It's not guesswork. I'm looking at that histogram all the way down to 30 seconds. I'm going to open my aperture to add a bit more light in, and you can see the histogram moving to the right. Now, 5.6 at 30 seconds is pretty cool, but I want 2 minutes. So all I'm now going to do is close my aperture by one stop, i.e. 1, 2, 3. That way I have to compensate by doubling the length of time the shutter speed stays open. So instead of 30 seconds, it now stays open to 60 seconds. And I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm going to close that aperture to f11. 1, 2, 3 clicks. Double my shutter speed to compensate. And that is how you calculate a 2-minute exposure when your histogram only reads light. up to 30 seconds, which I would say 99% of all cameras do. Apologies for the Blair Witch thing going on here. It is so dark. I'm struggling to focus with the camera. A dark blanket of cloud has just materialized in the sky. I can't see any stars and there is no moon at all. It is pitch black. The only problem is the image I wanted to impress you guys with by capturing during the blue hour without the use of filters with a long exposure. I'm not going to be able to do that 100% because the tide height is just too high and it's taking forever. It's an hour and a half after high tide and the tide height is still too high for me to capture the picture that I want to show off to you guys. So what I've decided to do is take one more now, have a look at that in a second, but then I'm going to come back here tomorrow morning for sunrise, and if the tide height is still too high, then I'm just going to wait for the tide height to drop sufficiently enough for me to grab the picture that I want to show off to you guys. The only slight problem with that is I will then of course have to use filters to extend my shutter speed to 2 minutes. But if you do like the picture, it just means I could have captured it tonight if the timings would have worked out better for me. But you'll understand the principle of it all anyway, and I'll summarize it all in the morning when you guys can see me a bit better. Right, so I'm here some 3.5 hours after high tide. So that means I would have had to have hung around last night until around about midnight time. So I'm so glad I drew a line on the proceedings last night and came back this morning. But at least now I can conclude this video by showing you the main picture that I had intended to take last night, photographing nothing. And so what I mean by that is I've got a very strong subject in front of me and I'm going to use that as only 10% of the frame. The other 90% of the frame is going to be nothing but negative space. And if you've got a subject that's powerful enough, then that 10% can carry off the 100%. And in which case, it's such good practice to photograph nothing. It really is cool. Let me know your thoughts down below.